welcome to SVG-TV's news for Thursday, July 8, 2021. I'm Triska Campbell with the details. Prime Minister Dr. Alf Gonsalves said that the policy of the government and the Royal St. Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force has no tolerance for police brutality. He was at the time responding to a question in Parliament on Tuesday from opposition Senator Shavern John on what the government is doing to tackle police brutality in SVG. The Prime Minister said that whenever there is instances of police brutality or allegations of police brutality, they are accommodated either into an internal investigation or perpetrators will be prosecuted.
Wherever there are instances of or allegations of police brutality, they are accommodated either through an internal investigation, because some persons don't necessarily want, some people make a complaint and don't want to proceed with a case, and the internal complaints department deal with this matter. More often than not, the people who are subject to police, quote-unquote police brutality, or at least allegations of it, the files are usually sent, having matters being investigated, sent to the Director of Public Prosecution. And in most cases, I've been advised that there is some form of prosecution. The overwhelming number of cases, we have had prosecution. In some cases,
Dr. Gonsalves further explained how the police are usually dealt with if found guilty of brutality.
I would like to point out that in most cases, in fact, the overwhelming number of cases, if a police officer is found guilty of a criminal offense, the Commissioner of Police will make the representation to the Public Service Commission for the Police Service Commission for this person to be dismissed from the force. In other cases, the Police Commissioner exercises his discretion not to do that. And that is in the purview of the Commissioner of Police, because cases differ, and you can understand that in some cases the Commissioner may go one way, and in other cases they go another way.
The Prime Minister, however, noted that police officers should also be given the rights to self-defense.
Honourable Senator, that this government has a zero tolerance towards police brutality. Police can do their work without beating up people. Of course, the point is this: we must give the police officer, however, the right to self-defense, that if somebody is coming to them and beating them or resisting arrest, they would have to subject them, and they have to subject them with reasonable force within the four walls of the law, and not to go out on an excursion on their own. So I'm glad I have the opportunity to restate what is the position of the government. We don't support any issue of police brutality.
Dr. Gonsalves further told Parliament that his government is always seeking ways to enhance public confidence in the protective service of the police force.
At a broad policy level of having far more police now than before, far better trained police than before, far better equipped police than before. Larger sums of monies have been budgeted for the police, and you can see the difference in salaries over the last 20 years, the growth of those salaries, working conditions, and the like. So there's a general improvement in the quality of policing. But there are other initiatives in building confidence, investigating the reports made by the public, and providing timely feedback and updates. Ensure in the overwhelming number of cases that the perpetrators are brought to justice. Information programs like On the Beat program on NBC Radio and the Care Serve Protect Live program on the police Facebook page, hosting several crime prevention exhibitions, developing and participating in several neighborhood watch groups. And there are several neighborhood watch groups where the police and the community involved in community policing.
Protesters came out for the second time this week in front of the Parliament building to express their dissatisfaction with what they say are several social ills and injustices taking place in the country. There was a heavy police presence at today's protest rather than unlike what was seen on Tuesday, which was a bit rowdy. Larissa Pugsley-Kidd tells us more in this report.
In front of Parliament, protesters continue to demand justice for all and for other social ills in society to be addressed fairly. The disgruntled protesters confronted the police at the entrance of Parliament buildings.
Country, I watch well used to demonstrate every Monday morning. James Mitchell never send out the police force. Never send out the police force.
This is what the officers need. A better working condition.
Attempts to block the road led to a brief confrontation with the police. For some like this gentleman, he had a personal reason to join the protest.
My wife's pension, that is giving me 600 and somebody else per month. And for over a year now, I'm not getting nothing.
And have you tried different ways of maybe inquiring to see why?
I go to INS, I went to a lawyer, all kind of things I done. They tell me open a bank account, I do that. And I send up the account, my bank account to the bank, and up to now, nothing coming through.
Members of the Special Services Unit, SSU, stood on top of the Central Market, having a keen eye on the protesters and the Parliament building. No one was allowed access to the area, as we were told it was for security purpose. On the ground were members of the Rapid Response Unit. After Parliament took a break around 2:30, Leader of the Opposition, Dr. Godwin Friday, joined the protesters. He told them he is proud of them and the turnout. He also reiterated his call for fresh elections.
My goal is for fresh elections in this country. And to push by any means that we can that will elevate this course and the lives of the people of this country.
According to Dr. Friday, they will be referring to the Market Square where the ongoing protest has been taking place, Democracy Square. For SVG-TV News, Larissa Pugsley-Kidd.
News now on the La Soufrière volcano. Lead monitoring scientist Lloyd Lynch said gas emissions will take some time to lower, but based on the trend, it will reduce at some point in time. Speaking on radio yesterday, the scientist said gas readings remain constant with just over 200 tons daily.
Yes, we do expect it to remain high for a while, but eventually the system will the system will decline, the gas will decline. We don't know how long it will take, but certainly we expect it to. If we see an increase, that usually is not a good indicator, but we do expect it to take a while to decline because we have an open system.
As it regards to seismic events from the volcano, the scientists say they remain above normal, but there is nothing to worry about as it was this way during the effusive stage of the eruption in December last year.
During the effusive phase, sometimes we get events in what we call swarms, and in one day you could get over 1,000 small earthquakes. Now, okay. 13 events per day. Good. So that's what we mean when we say it continues to be in a state of unrest.
Director of National Emergency Management Organization, NEMO, Michelle Forbes, said with the ongoing threat of lahars or mud flows, there will be a great need to strengthen the monitoring of La Soufrière going forward. Forbes said in this regard, the organization is working in collaboration with the UWI Seismic Research Center to boost capacity locally.
One of the concerns, of course, we have coming out from the eruptions, with the last one being on the 22nd, is the presence, we'll have the presence of lahars with us for some time. And lahars are really the rain, when the rain mixes with the ash and all the volcanic materials coming down the slopes, coming through the gullies, and they pick up the rocks and everything with it, and it can be very destructive and can move anything within its path. So from the explosive eruptions, our concern, of course, where we sit at that NEMO, going forward is that we will have Lahaz with us for some time until all of that material has come down. And it may take a while because even though we would have had eruption prior to that in 1979, we see that when we have flooding, heavy rainfall coming down from the Rabica, material come down. It means that a lot of material is still in the mountains and will be in the mountains for some time and on the flanks of the volcano to come down into the gullies and into the valleys. So that's one of our greatest threats going forward.
Forbes also noted that they are looking to transform the Belmont Observatory into a research center.
Looking to hire our own resident geophysicist, if you want to put it, a geoscientist to head the unit, an engineer also, a geologist, and we have our technicians going forward. We are looking to also turn the Belmont Observatory into a research center in a kind of way, because it is ripe, St. Vincent now is ripe for research. Lassufre and what it has done over the last few months, it's an area now that's ripe for research for both the SRC and their team, and for the scientists and budding scientists. And we hope that we'll have a few local scientists who will be, such inclined to actually look towards working in that field. So you have the human capacity. We need to have that on the ground to be able to monitor 24 hours.
Cabinet has appointed a Rehabilitation and Reconstruction Technical Committee comprising of a diverse key line of ministries carried out by the chaired by the Ministry of Transport and Work, with the responsibility for providing temporary housing for families who remain in public shelters almost 3 months after the explosive volcanic eruption of La Soufrière. Minister of Housing and Informal Settlement, Orlando Brewster, who was responding to a question in Parliament on Tuesday, said the committee will identify suitable plans for temporary and permanent housing and other infrastructure developments post-volcanic eruption.
We are aware the red zones have still not been given the all clear to return home, so that we can do a proper assessment of all the homes and give a proper estimate as to damage sustained. To date, displaced families currently in public shelters or private home placement have not officially expressed interest in being relocated. Some residents from the red zones have articulated verbally that their preference is for returning to that area in the red zone, even though the all clear has not been given for habitation. Preliminary investment, however, and assessment are currently being carried out by the state to determine the various levels of damage, ranging from level 1 to level 4, with level 4 being the highest, of which it is categorized to mean a total relocation from the area that the individual is currently housed.
Noting that no official consultation has been held in the red and orange zones, which will determine who are requesting relocation, Brewster said the Rehabilitation and Reconstruction Technical Committee will identify lands for those who wish to be relocated.
At this time, even though residents some have articulated relocation, the Cabinet appointed Rehabilitation and Reconstruction Technical Committee is responsible with this to provide the temporary housing alternative for family place. This committee as soon as will also identify the suitable plans and areas of where some of those who are articulating relocation can be housed. Therefore, the pending recommendation from the Cabinet Committee for temporary and permanent housing will be provided to the Cabinet, and as soon as that is done, an update will be given to the Honorable House. Much obliged, Madam Speaker.
The Roads, Buildings and General Services Authority, BRAGSA, has commenced construction of a temporary school in Montiong in the north-central Windward for 250 students. This as government takes steps to relocate the staff and students of the Sandy Bay Secondary School out of the red zone. The school was damaged following eruptions of last Friday on April 9th. BRAGSA said the project is being carried out at a cost of $960,000. BRAGSA's project officer, Cyrillus Haksha, gives an overview of the project.
At this stage, we are actually doing alignment for the units. We are supposed to be building 5 units, 3 singles and a double, comprising of, we have another washroom in the back there, and then we have this building you see in there that is going to be turned into a classroom, 2 classrooms and a staff room. Right now, we are at the stage of alignment. We are doing the alignment for the units. We are doing the trench digging, as you can see, and we have a very minimal team here right now with us this morning. We just started in the week.
Minister of Finance Camila Gonzalez presented a bill during Tuesday's sitting of Parliament to make several amendments to the Banking Act of 2015. The revision of the Act, which was universally enforced across the Eastern Caribbean, comes after a review was led by the Eastern Caribbean Bank, which took into account feedback outlining various areas of concerns in the banking sector. Other Eastern Caribbean countries have already enacted the revisions, which include the harmonization of language, policy issues, and clarification of terms. The Finance Minister outlined the drafting revisions that have already been done.
There are 3 broad areas as follows. In the area of drafting clarifications, certain provisions of the Act were identified as requiring amendment to ensure clarity of intent and consistency in language. We have harmonized throughout the Act the references to, say, carrying on banking business. So that's one of the drafting clarifications. There's the section in 53 which speaks to licensed financial institutions that may acquire or establish a subsidiary company. The provision is intended not only to govern future subsidiaries, but all subsidiaries, including existing subsidiaries. So there is an amendment to clarify that point. In the definition section, there are certain defined terms that needed to be amended or added in the interpretation section to eliminate various ambiguities that have come up in the application of the law throughout the currency union over the last 5 or 6 years.
The updated Banking Act will now impose certain restrictions on activities of the bank, including the payment of dividends and unsecured loans given to bank employees.
The Act now imposes limitations on certain activities of banks, including prohibitions on declaring or distributing dividends during any financial year that the licensed financial institution experiences a loss. There are restrictions on investments by banks in real estate and restrictions on unsecured lending. So in the past, it was less regulated, the manner in which an employee of the bank could get an unsecured loan, and now it is pegged to the salary of the employee. So you can get, as an employee, an unsecured loan of up to 50% of your annual salary, and there are certain specific conditions under which you can go up to 100%, but the central bank would then govern that very closely.
The Act also reverts to its previous guidelines governing the length of an appointment for an external auditor or concurring partner to every 9 and 6 years, respectively. Furthermore, financial institutions that are from the region but are not Eastern Caribbean Currency Union members will now have the same license fees as local banks, as they were given the definition of foreign banks and were previously charged as such and paid higher fees. The finance minister also shared additional policy updates, including the appointment of directors or officers of financial institutions and an appeals process for persons discontented with the decisions taken by a bank.
Amended the section that deals with minimum paid up or assigned capital, and that would allow foreign branch banks to hold assigned capital in the currency union in the form of specified assets that are approved by the central bank. The treatment of a discharged bankrupt person under the fit and proper regulations has been amended so that the bank would be required to give its prior approval before somebody who had been declared bankrupt is deemed to be fit and proper to serve as a director or officer of a licensed financial institution. There is very critically an introduction of an appeals process for persons aggrieved by decisions of the bank. There's an introduction of a process by which officers and directors could be vetted by the bank to determine whether or not compliance with fit and proper criteria prior to appointment to boards or licensed financial institutions.
Additional policy updates also included amending the secrecy of information provision, the establishment of a bridge bank, and strengthening due process for levying penalties against banking institutions.
The bill also amends Section 178, which is the secrecy of information provision. That section provides for specific exceptions to the obligation to treat banking information as secret and confidential. The amendment would allow licensed financial institutions to disclose confidential information where necessary in the conduct of due diligence in relation to a potential transaction. It is also amended to provide for the establishment of a bridge bank for an initial period of 12 months and the specific circumstances under which bridge bank status may be automatically terminated. In the interest of ensuring a fair and transparent process for the levying of administrative penalties, amendments were proposed in the bill to introduce a process for levying the penalties, which included the requirement to give notice to the financial institution of the intent to impose the penalty and the right of the affected licensee to make representation in the matter as set out in Clause 43 of the bill.
Prime Minister Dr. Alf Gonsalves and Minister of Agriculture Suboto Caesar shared their views on the changes to the Act, with Caesar noting that the future amendments will come as the country continues to develop its banking sector.
I was very happy to read the amendments outlined in the bill, because they basically bring us in alignment with many global best practices. I have looked through the amendments and I wish to wholeheartedly support these amendments to the Banking Act of 2015. I'm obliged, Madam Speaker.
That ordinary people interested in where they put the money must be safe. That from a systemic standpoint, things ain't falling apart. And whilst there'll be weaknesses here and there, the money and banking and financial system are pretty sound. I want to thank the central bank, the various lawyers across the sub-region and the Ministers of Finance for bringing this common bill to help us to strengthen our banking sector.
For the opposition, MP for Central Kingstown, Major Sinclair Leacock, gave their support for the changes.
These governance issues are a coordinated and well-justified exercise to tidy up the currency union, to maintain, and knock on wood, one of the things we must really give ourselves a lot of credit for in the Eastern Caribbean. We could easily be the envy of the rest of the Caribbean where our financial systems are concerned. It's a time, Madam Speaker, to say that on this side of the House, we are comfortable in lending our support to this piece of legislation that makes our countries and our unions and our financial architecture much safer than it could otherwise be.